Well guys, I'm sorry for being this late again, but it seems that something weird and not so wonderful has been happening with my post. First, I lose my Haolonggu Cosmoceratops, then this one just sat in the warehouse for 7 days doing nothing. But I'm really excited about it, so let's get to it. Edmontosaurus is one that we all grew up with, even though for those of you old enough, you'll remember it better under the sobriquet of Anatosaurus or Anatotitan. This epitome of the boring, crestless hadrosaur was once relegated to just being a background NPC, a walking shadow to strut and fret until hunted and consumed, and then is heard no more. Recently, however, Edmontosaurus has enjoyed an appreciation for its own sake, and many of you have been waiting forever for a top-quality Edmontosaurus, preferably a Nectans. Now, PNSO has delivered. Is it top quality? Yes. Is it a Nectans? Yes and no. Now, right away, I'm stating the obvious when I say that this thing is a beauty, and it's a very good, respectable size. Accounting for the curve, I estimate 33.5 centimeters or 13.2 inches, which is 11.7 meters or 38.4 feet in a real animal. Edmontosaurus regalis used to be generally regarded as larger, potentially achieving around 12 meters or 39 feet in length. But Wosing and Evans in 2022 identified 5 size classes for Anectans, with the largest also reaching 11 to 12 meters, or 36 to 39 feet. So this model lies between 1 to 35 to 1 to 36. And here's the Wonder Artistic Models humanoid for reference. I absolutely love the hadrosaur bow plan, and while PNSO has had some hits and misses here, in general the anatomy is captured very wonderfully here. In particular, you'll be pleased to see that the spindly forelimbs of yesteryear are now replaced with a robustness that inspires confidence. When we get into the close-ups, you'll see how the first integumentary milestone heralded by the Parasaurolophus has been refined even further. As for the colour, I think most of us have now reached a state of learned helplessness when it comes to PNSO's colour palette. And yet, as we move through the model, you see there's more here than initially meets the eye, and when you see how complex this is, all will be forgiven. Now right here in the head, you receive notice that this isn't going to be a run-of-the-mill presentation. First of all, that very fine detail in the face, almost delicate, and then the way the colour is applied here really highlights that delicacy. In the snout, a slight reddish tint. In the eye too, you can make out the delicate scales. And PNSO has taken care to include a sclerotic ring, resulting in a very small but carefully painted eye. The faint texturing here highlights a nasal ridge in a non-vulgar way. That leads the eye right back to the front into this keratinous beak. And delightfully, it overhangs and projects downwards very strongly, quite a distance down, which Cao Chuang based on the shape on mummies found, including those vertical striations. And the possibility of a serrated edge to the beak. A Nectans LACM 23502, for example, shows a hook-shaped character more extensive than previously imagined, and I'm happy to see this daringly depicted here. You'll notice there are no cheeks, which respects the work done by Nabavizadeh, which we'll look at very quickly later. Almost as if conscious of the polarizing effect this look will have if the mouth were open, this one has its mouth politely shut, without articulation, and hence not ruining such a beautiful portrait with unpleasant lines. Dorsally, there is of course that coxcomb. Unusual shape to it. Reasoning a display function, PNSO has made this a bright red. And although often depicted as a rounded form, PNSO has opted to follow a more complex shape. You can see that here, even with the flashy reddish pink, there's a very natural fade between the brighter red into the pink, then the brown of the general integument. And while we're here, we can take a dorsal view and admire that duckbill appearance, including the lateral extension at the end, and of course, that colour. And coming down here, we reach one of my favourite parts of the animal, the neck. You'll see that up here, where the animal is looking up, these natural skin folds, but also how these very delicate scales flow so naturally into them. Then proceeding downwards, we have larger, longer and more rectangular scales, suggestive of a possible protective function in this very vulnerable area. The variations here are beautifully done, and you can see how everything fits together like a living mosaic. The scale morphology here is very much in line from what we have from mummified remains, such as this one in Bell et al. 2014. In addition, the overall bulk follows the ideas presented in that Bertozzo et al. 2020 paper I raved about in the PNSO Parasaurolophus review. Nicely thick, respecting the soft tissue that would have enveloped that neck. And once again, you see how wonderfully complex the paint application is, not just in the browns, but how this streak just melts into it. And going into the body, you can see again that amazing color application. Now truly, it's shocking to me that this model isn't in the museum line. You need only look at the variations in scale in such an organic fashion, together with how the various colors segue into each other. You can see in this area here, and then going into the belly, and just sit back to admire the appearance here. And moving inferiorly, you see more of those very fine skin folds and wrinkles. You'll also notice these little clusters, islets almost, of larger scales, or tubercles. Now, these are done very deliberately to mimic skin impressions of similar regions found in various finds. Now what's really wonderful is that it's really something you need to be scrutinizing up close to notice. There's no vulgar attention called to these features, which gives the whole work a very natural feel. In fact, each region of this beautiful model looks like an individual piece of art. The forelimbs are a masterpiece of detail and paint application in themselves. We start here in the shoulder, where you can see just a fainter suggestion of the long scapula underneath the skin. You'll see the very minute scalation moving down, and how naturally it complements the folds in the skin and the bulges in the musculature. I love the way the scales increase in size again to the front here. Now, a common gripe of past PNSO hadrosaurs is the almost extreme slenderness of the forelimb. And here you can see they've beefed it up noticeably, as evinced by the muscularity in the arm and forearm. They're now a lot more robust, which will please many of us. And down that now famous hand, as first suggested in the Dakota specimen. Now that beautiful hand is as lifelike as I've seen in any model. Cao Tong directly references this Dakota specimen, and here you see how that's created very nicely, with a larger central hoof, and a small medial one, and just a little nub on the lateral side. And all of it is done in a natural color, making this unusual feature a natural part of the animal, and not a caricature to highlight. And what about the hind limbs? Now I need not prattle on too much and just show you more of that wonderful sculpting and painting. Especially just look at the very fineness of these scales where the various folds are. And also the wide range of colors gloriously gracing each area. You can also appreciate the musculature with the bundles where the gastrocnemius are perhaps the peroneus here, and then the various tibial muscles in front as well, all showing through beautifully. And down to the nails, where even that interface between skin and claw is rendered so naturally, and the overall feel is a lived-in, realistically dirty appearance. Now, needless to say, you have the soft tissue detail underneath as well. And then up here in the dorsal midline, you have those midline scutes, forming those rather characteristic crenellations. Now even here, PNSO has been very deliberate. Cao Tong has based this decision on various finds suggesting that they were small in front, longer and sharper over the hip area, with the distance between them getting shorter and shorter going into the tail. So it's nice to know that this isn't a random presentation, and I'd like to hear why artists reconstruct their anatomy the way they do. PNSO also took care to build up the paraspinal musculature along each side, which is really nice. Now, care was taken not to give too much lateral movement, considering the trellis of ossified tendons present in hadrosaurs. And we might as well finish with the tail. And you can see that once again, there's a difference in the overall shade of the color, the shape and the form of the stripes, but continued in a seamless way. I just love the thick bundle of muscle here. And of course, the detail is likewise taken care of. Brief look at the underside. So all in all, such a beautiful model of a very important dinosaur. Now, before we get to the comparisons, just a couple of points. In 2011, Campione and Evans published a study in which they conducted morphometric analyses of all known complete Edmontosaurus skulls up to that point, using 15 linear measurements and 13 landmarks. Now, factoring differences due to size, individual, and ontogenetic variation, they concluded that most of these could be reduced to two species, Anectens and Regalis. And even across the growth series, two most obvious for our purposes are that Regalis has a rostrocaudally short and dorsoventrally tall snout relative to Anectens. The discovery of a coxcomb impression, as reported by Bell et al. In 2014, suggested that this heretofore unknown structure might well be an autapomorphy differentiating Regalis, and since then, many depictions of Regalis has this structure. And so, the knee-jerk reaction to seeing this release image might well be, another Regalis. However, considering the skull, this PNSO seems to me to match better the proportional differences in Anectens versus Regalis in Campione and Evans. The lower profile of the snout, its slenderness, and though not suggested as an autapomorphy, the lack of prominent brow ridges, I think it's closer to Anectens. It's also possible that no such structure has been found in Anectens simply because it hasn't been preserved. Still, some might argue that given the existence of so many Anectens remains without it, it is possible, as suggested by Bell, to be unique to Regalis. I had in fact written to PNSO to ask about this when the images dropped, but they have not deigned to reply. And perhaps the good folk at the Paleo Nerd blog will come up with a particular skull showing it is in fact Regalis, so let's just wait and see. Now, if you're like me, you're fond of the cheek look in Ornithischian dinosaurs, with a vertical sheet of muscle that bridges the labial ridge of the maxilla and the labial ridge of the dentary. There is a real visual appeal to me in that stretched crescent between the upper and lower jaws. It all seemed like a good idea, since the kind of cheek holding food made sense as the animal chewed, and those inset teeth sure looks like sexy proof of it. This has in recent years been rejected as being unparsimonious because it would require a whole bunch of site differentiations, muscle reorientations, and a host of other evolutionary changes. Alternatives have been proposed, with the work of Nabavizadeh in 2018 and then 2020 being one of the most prominent. I've talked about this in the PNSO Triceratops review, but it's interesting enough to look at again. Now, to clarify, by cheeks in Ornithischians, we don't mean cheeks homologous to those that mammals have, which is really the buccinator muscle spanning the maxilla and the mandible. Now, reptiles don't have these, which we use for suckling. The idea is that these dinosaurs evolved pseudo-cheeks from muscles they did have. Now, what these pseudo-cheeks are is the question. I don't want to get into minutiae, but the long and short of it is, it's the AMES, or the Adductor Mandibulae Externus Superficialis, which mercifully we'll call the AMES, which attaches to the LDR here. Now, differences in this ridge suggest how the pseudo-cheek may present in different clades. In ceratopsians, the proposed pseudo-cheek is wide and covers the teeth. In hadrosaurs, the insertion is such that a large number of teeth will be exposed, looking like this. And this is the kind of margin we should see if this PNSO model had articulated jaws. And as I said, however, PNSO opted to keep its mouth shut, which was probably a good idea to minimize furor, but still obviously cheekless. And taken together with everything else, this is, I believe, the model that really amalgamates as much of the current knowledge as possible, and is definitely one that will have a prominent place on the shelf. Now, cranial anatomy and feeding mechanics are the areas that fascinate me most about hadrosaurids. Now, I wish we had more time, but I don't want to try your patience, so I'll just reference below the articles by Nabavizadeh, which I think are essential for anyone interested in the topic. And in addition, if you're really crazy about this, I've just gotten this book hot off the press by the man himself, and it's really distracting me from other things I should be doing. Alright, let's get to the comparisons. Now, the only other Edmontosaurus I have is this wild safari Edmontosaurus. It was a big model in its time, and rightly so given the size of this marvelous animal, but is dwarfed by our PNSO today. I really like this model, though I was never happy with the proportions and always hoping for a good one from PNSO, and you can see that PNSO delivers. In addition, of course, you will get a refinement of scale detail. Updates like the more downward projecting beak, and of course much better paint applications in today's model. But this is still a very nice model to have, and I'm glad I have it. And next we see the other big hadrosaur, the impressive PNSO Parasaurolophus that heralded the beginnings of that fine skin detail that PNSO has continued to refine even to this day. And this was a big model, and it still is, but this Edmontosaurus is now the bully boy on the block. And you can see the difference in the robustness of the forelimb here. An even larger one to compare it to would be the PNSO Ornithischian. And here we can see the humble origins with which PNSO started its integument detail, and now where we are. It's way above 1/35, the head's a little too big, but it's still a nice one to have just for historic value. The always beautiful PNSO Lambeosaurus. Absolutely love that green and that reticulated pattern. We have here the criminally undersized PNSO Qingdaosaurus. And for a different flavor, here's the Parasaurolophus. And of course, we want to see how it compares to the PNSO T-Rexes. And here we have the Wilson, and here the Cameron, and I think you can see that our Edmontosaurus is indeed a respectable size. So that's it for the PNSO Edmontosaurus. Really, the work done on this model is so much in line with the museum line model that I'm pleasantly surprised that, given its popularity and size, it's not in that line. Mercifully, since that would really jack up the price of this. Our PNSO named this Zabad, which in Hebrew I believe translates to gift, and as the name suggests, this is a gift indeed for anyone who loves hadrosaurs in general and Edmontosaurus in particular. In this model, I believe that PNSO has reached a new zenith in its hadrosaurid presentations, and every time a newcomer seems in danger of usurping PNSO's place in terms of quality, they always come back swinging. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.